A very good morning to you once again. Just as usual, coming in, we are very delighted to have you join us here on Smart Means Business today, the 28th June 2024. We are live on Smart 24 TV. It's always a delight to have you join us. My name is Kem Chadorin. I'll be taking you through with the latest national, regional, as well as international news. Now remember, just like I always say it on Smart Means Business, we are very positive-minded. We always want to seize the day with the opportunities that come along with it. So please join us as we do this. Get onto our social media pages. Let us know what you think about some of the topics that we get to discuss and talk about. And what would you want to hear as well? What is happening? What is trending within your own community that you would want us to talk about? Now, just to give you a little bit of a hint, and what we're going to be talking about today is trade relations within the East African region, the East African community. What is happening between our neighbors? The riots right now are happening all over, with Kenya. And of course, as had been mentioned before, it seems as though when Kenya sneezes, Uganda catches a cold, because we've seen quite a lot of traders as well stranded with some of their goods at the borders once again. So we're going to give you just a little bit of a highlight into what has been happening before. Is it only Kenya? Is or the rest of the different African, East African countries as well involved in this? Then we'll come down and hint on in our discussion with factors impeding positive trade relations among the East African member countries. When it comes to business updates, I will as well take you through on weathering through a trade impasse as an entrepreneur. What do you do in moments such as this? Coming down into business insights, where we have a one-on-one insights with someone who is going to give us a little bit more detailed explanation, get to give us a little bit of how things are supposed to turn out on different topics all throughout the week from Monday to Friday. This time we will be talking about agroecology, a remedy to coordinated agricultural programs in Uganda. Why is this important? Because in most cases, when it comes down to agricultural programs within Uganda, we find out that most of them seem to have gaps, especially when it comes to coordination. If at all there is something to do with soybean farming and a lot is being pushed inside there, or poultry or something like that, they will tell you at the end of the day that you find out most of them get stuck. At the end of the day, it could have if there is a bumper harvest, at the end of the day, the farmers will come up and say, we are stuck with the bumper harvest because we are being offered a low price. So with agroecology, we have Mr. Robert Guloba will join us later on between 9 to 10 to let us know how this works and how it can eventually, subsequently, do positive stuff to the export markets, especially in regards to fresh produce. Remember, all throughout the last couple of weeks, we've been talking about how Uganda is facing increasingly fresh produce rejections. Now, why is this a core when it comes to Smart Means business? Because you have had as well, it is no longer a song, it is something that we should be thinking about. The government is pushing for farmers to actually think about value addition, to think about export-oriented markets, to think about really every time you're going to throw something inside the ground, make sure that you are doing so, not only just to think of home and subsistence and eating on the home front, but you are also thinking about export. Can I get money out of this? This has happened not only with cocoa, with coffee. Coffee is getting quite a huge boost in Uganda, but also vanilla, soybean right now, sim as well, has really got people flustered thinking about this. Of course, recently as well, the leaders in Uganda were talking about beef exports to Saudi Arabia. So most of the farmers in Uganda are being rallied towards producing to tap into the export potential. However, we have also noticed, even in our little investigations here, we have noticed that indeed there are gaps within this cold chain, there are gaps within the coordination, and sometimes when we do bring in someone, especially in regards to how this can be addressed. We are looking at how does the farmer benefit, the farmer who is being rallied. Right now we know for sure, even with the budget, that quite a lot, whether it's 100 billion going into, from the budget, the recent budget reading, you know very well that the allocations came in through to PDM, through to the SACCOs, the MIOGAs, and all the way through, making sure that financing is available for those who want to start agribusinesses, for those ones who want to get an extra push to be able to first get organized and start something. So there's really no excuse on that part. More and more efforts really are being channeled towards, are you able to get that finance boost and access those monies to buy whatever inputs you need? And then of course attached to this is the financial literacy. Are you able to plan accordingly and spend this money wisely? And then of course the third part is, are you able to have access to a cooperative so that you can maybe be able to come together, whether it is market, whether it is have the cooperative get into negotiating for a better price for you. Are you able to access this? So we don't have as much of an excuse for the farmers down there and those within agribusiness. You also have quite a notable amount of money being pushed into agro-industrialization to ensure that whatever is got or whatever is being grown on the home front, whatever it is, basically you'll find and make sure that there is value addition. Recently, in the last couple of weeks, we had the president open up the facility in coffee in the western side of Uganda. And we were looking at still the same thing. How do you add value to coffee? One, because Uganda's coffee is quite different. And this has been said as well about Uganda's pineapples, Uganda's oranges, Uganda's fruits, basically, Uganda's vegetables, that our fruits, organic fruits, are really, really beautiful. They're wonderful. They're tasty. So you get particular people come up and tell you this. And when they tell us these as farmers, the very first thing that we think about is good news coming in. So what do I do about this? However, we also know for sure a lot still needs to be done. Let's get back and talk about trade relations. Quite a lot has been coming in regards to that. Of course, the majority of you who have been tapping into different news coming in from Smart 24 TV could have been seeing the different cars stranded, the different trucks stranded along the way. But the reality about it is, let's backtrack a little bit and see. It's not only just with Kenya, but we've had differences as well in relations, trade relations with Sudan. Remember, especially with our grain, our maize, Uganda prefers to export to Sudan, South Sudan, more than to elsewhere, because South Sudan gives us a higher price. And in that case, we had instances, for example, with South Sudan a couple of years back, whereby they got the impact. They literally stopped our truckers, and quite a number of trucks were literally stuck at the Nimule part, at the Nimule post, because they said within their routine quick checks that most of our maize had high levels of aflatoxin, and then later on it was also issued as well that there were live infestations of live insects within our maize. Now, the thing that comes out is the lack of transparency, especially when it comes to this. You get to remember that during that time, the Ugandan government was really, really trying to look for ways in which it could be able to broker something so that the traders don't make losses. Because now, this was from around June, it was from around May to June, almost 3 weeks, and our traders were stuck there. And remember, these are traders that get to hire some of these trucks. So you are being billed daily, and yet your grain is stuck in one place, is not within storage conditions that are not even appropriate. So losses and losses were made. Now, what comes out the most is that whenever this sort of situation happens, it becomes very difficult. There's an urgency on the part of the country that is exporting. There's an urgency because we know very well that they don't get to access so many storage facilities that are appropriate. So any time lost is really significant, because it will mean that the traders in effect will not make to stand any profits. They will make huge losses. So during this time between that particular challenge, Uganda requested definitely that South Sudan utilizes its laboratories within Gulu to get a second opinion. They mentioned that, you know what, this first way of testing for aflatoxins may not be the right way, may not be the most reliable way. But of course, South Sudan officials rejected that and said they would prefer to seek the laboratory services of a different country apart from the ones resident within Uganda or South Sudan, which was really challenging, especially. Of course, when it comes down, different stakeholders were taken in to try and come to something. But this is not the first time that has happened. We've also had issues that are emanating from security breaches. We've had lots of traders cry and get looted, and then in most cases they don't get compensated. Now when it comes down, of course, to Kenya, it's also another issue as well. Right now, this is not even just the transportation per se of passengers going. You had Namaiba bus partners were talking about how the buses getting out of Uganda into Kenya have decreased. Out of the number, I think 13 buses that were getting out the last couple of days, the majority made a return trip and came back. So you find, of course, the prices have gone high. There's quite a lot of concern because some of the trucks or some of the buses that went out prior during that time of unsettlement really got looted, and some of the passengers' luggage was stolen. So this is why that comes in on the side of passenger vehicles. But when it comes down to trade, we have had an on, it's a love and hate relationship that has been there with Kenya, with each country really flinging lots of accusations. We remember that we have, from the Ugandan side, we have mentioned to Kenya that in most cases it should be fair, because you can't have the same scenario happening. Protectionism on the Kenyan part, and then of course knowing that we utilize Mombasa for most of our cargo in transit, you get to find out that at certain times, if there is anything, or whether it's documentation, or whether there is a stop or a halt in some of these negotiations, most of our traders suffer. When it comes to grain, let me just give you a hint about how important this has been. We mentioned that actually, I think Monday, we talked about the importance of Uganda's grain, Uganda's exports, as well to Kenya. Whereas in recent years, Kenya has preferred to import from Tanzania, because most of our grain is actually taken to South Sudan. That gives us quite a higher price. You will find that we are still exporting to Kenya. But the trouble about it as well is, in most cases, you have quite a lot of houses right now in Kenya getting to buy food. And this is something that we mentioned on Monday within this week. So when you have, especially the grain, the maize, and alternatively when it came in and started getting quite a lot of its bulk from Tanzania, and also halted some of the products getting into from Uganda, you found quite a lot of millers within Kenya actually struggling and saying that there were price increases in bags of maize, bags of flour out on the Kenyan market, because not quite a lot of food was present within Kenya. Those are some of the repercussions of some of these trade imbalances, not even just imbalances, but the constraints, the barriers that continuously come in. Now, when it comes to Tanzania, we have looked at Tanzania from quite different angles. Tanzania, it will literally protect its interests first. And we saw that during that time when Kenya was complaining, Tanzania was saying, you know what, instead of coming in as Tanzanian business persons, coming into Tanzania to buy our maize, why don't you send the monies, be attached to particular unions or particular groups, so that you send the money down to Tanzania, wherever you are, not just necessarily Kenya alone, as well as Uganda, as well as other countries. Send the money down so that they can use their own Tanzanian persons to get down to the farmers, or send the money down to the farmers, or whoever is able to tap to the farmers. It sounded as if they were trying to eliminate the middleman. Different people coming in from different countries, getting to Tanzanian farmers and then offering them a lower price. And this is what is happening, quite especially in Uganda. But Tanzania was firm, and it said, we will not allow this to happen. And I remember permits were given during that time. It was quite a lot of confusion. Permits were given during that time to truckers who were coming in, Kenyan truckers who had maize, grain from Tanzania, taking it to Kenya. And when they did so, with the same permits that they had been given from Tanzania, it was found out by the time they reached the border that some of these permits were expired. So you will notice that sometimes Tanzania is very protective of its markets, very protective of its farmers, and whatever little that they get to put in place is really geared at protecting the interests of the farmers. This is what is happening. Whether it's our eggs, right now we have our milk as well. Some of our milk producing milk like Brookside here within Uganda and others as well have been talking about the fact that there is trouble when it comes to taking milk to Kenya, exporting milk to Kenya. So it's not only just eggs to South Sudan, it's not just eggs. Recently it was lifted up. It is also the milk right now, it's also the grain, a lot of stuff happening. But lots and lots should be done, because the East African community, remember, comes in, the principles are basically to harmonize, to be able to sit together and come down with something to allow a very good platform to be able to, one, relate with one another in unity, stand together, unified, but also trade amongst each other. So if at all someone comes up, one country comes up with a whim and says, your goods right now cannot get inside here, and then you go through the whole saga of having to make losses, your traders cannot do A, B, C, D, they are literally swimming and swimming further, drowning in debt. It is not something that is good. And I believe the East African community officials should be able to categorically work with the ministries that are relevant to this issue and do something about it. But we are tracking, right now we are tracking on, it may not just be the riots per se that are causing that 5-kilometer queue, as had been highlighted yesterday on Uganda to Kenya, but we are also looking at the very different past, what has happened in the past and what has been done. There have been promises, but the promises have been broken. We would want something that is sustainable, good relations between all the countries in the East African community. Right now, let's take a little bit of a break and we get right into the press review. Let's go right and dive into the press review and find out what's in the papers. Some news coming in within The press coming, very important news. The Daily Monitor. Morning, Noah.
Good morning.
Delighted to have you.
How are you? Thank you.
Yes. Did you know that right now Uganda's population jumps by 11.3 million? Yes, 11.3 million increase since the last conducted population census in 2014.
Yeah.
This has been released, of course, by UBOS, and Dr. Chris Machiza, the executive director, mentioned this, that the counting of people in the country started on May 10th and ended May 26th. Of course, we did highlight all throughout the different challenges and moving on from Plan A to Plan B to find out why. But the total population right now of the country stands at 45.9 million persons compared to 34.6 million at the last count in 2014.
People are still not satisfied. People are still not satisfied with the results.
They're actually saying, quite a number of them are saying that there is a challenge. Not everyone was counted.
There's that online global population tracking website that puts us at 49 million people.
At 49?
Yeah, at 49. But yes, this is the national census.
Yes, and they're saying 45.
And 45. So it still has a lot of questions. But yes, this is the official population that has been announced by UBOS, and the president was at Serena. Remarkably,
northern countries register population surge. 972,000 the population of Yumbe, according to the census. Imagine the third most populous district, 143,000.
Which one is that?
That's Yumbe. That's the third most populous.
Busoga basically is competing with Kampala. Single-handedly competing with Kampala. Busoga is at 4 million, 4.3 million people.
My goodness.
But it means that Eastern Uganda is the second most populated area.
Wakiso district in central Buganda remains the most populous with 3.3 million people, followed by Kampala with 1.8, and then with Yumbe at 972,000 people, outpacing traditionally high population districts of Mukono and Kasese. Yeah.
The shocker is, according to the press review here, the shocker is that 50% of Ugandans are below the age of 17 years.
Yes.
That is a very young population.
Very shocking.
Gen Z is something that we are looking at. Population grows by 11.3 million, about 1 million more women than men. Yeah,
around 9.
That's good stuff. That's good stuff. Census analysis. And yes, so we have more women than men.
Yes, and it still stands.
That information you can use it.
It has been as such all throughout the years. Please don't get it twisted.
That information you can use it in whichever manner you feel pleased, but yes.
But responsibly, of course. Police summoned PS Sally over cooperatives compensation. Remember, like we've been mentioning, heads are rolling, and the Permanent Secretary of Ministry of Trade, Industry and Cooperatives, Ms. Geraldine Sally, and her team have been summoned by the police in connection to the ongoing investigations into this 164 billion compensation for cooperatives affected by previous wars. Yeah, so some news coming in as that.
And President appreciates Chivale. That's in the New Vision. Chivale, war veteran. You can also get that story here. President is appreciating the war veterans. That's quite a handshake there that we need to look at. I mean, Doreen, you need a handshake for being a very good journalist here. You're doing an amazing job.
So are you. 900,000. We're going to discuss that. More women than men. We're going to discuss that and where the flow of your conversation is going. But remember, like we have been talking, like I had mentioned a little bit earlier, we were talking about the trade relations, looking at what has been happening within the East African region, and now coming in these protests put dependence within the Daily Monitor. Protests put dependence on Nairobi route into sharp focus. On the other hand, Uganda and Tanzania continue to cooperate on key infrastructure, including the EACOP, yes, and the electric railway line winding up at Lake Victoria Mwanza Port via Port Bell or proposed Bukasa. Officials say this infrastructure will give impetus to the transport corridors in Tanzania in the long run. Remember, last week we talked about the introduction of reefers. Yes, those air-conditioned or chilled, refrigerated containers coming in.
Yes.
Instead of passing through, you get to have lots of Ugandans celebrating because they can now take their fresh produce all through Tanzania instead of going through Kenya.
Yes.
Then, of course, you have the fact that right now when riots are there in Kenya, a lot of destabilization is going on. So we need alternative routes through
Remember,
Tanzania.
Tanzania is also striking by the demonstrating. Traders are demonstrating in Tanzania. Now, here is 72% of population of the population. 72% of the population is dependent. In Uganda, experts say 72% being dependent on what? You can get all those details here in the new vision. But if I may understand what dependent is really about, I think that could also be another burden to the government if we are depending in whichever way.
Because the moment you say that almost 50% of Uganda's population is below 17, honestly, Noah, what are you thinking about?
17.
What are you thinking
50%,
about? Yes,
that is a big number. And yes, we still have more details here. 2024 census. More 944,000 females
than males
registered.
Please let not
population distribution by sub-region. And what is your concern?
Let not the males. We've had this before because remember this has been on the increase before. This is the first time this is happening. This has been
my brother, you're precious.
It has been broken.
My brother, you are precious.
This has been broken down before.
You are gold
don't
in
get
this
second
country.
wives. Don't get second wives. You're not helping. You're not helping us. You're not. At the end of the day, you'll be in court for failure to take care of your responsibilities.
But polygamy is allowed in Uganda.
Polygamy, they are still talking about it.
But it's allowed for now.
They are still talking about it.
And of course, we are fighting the other side of the life.
At Smart 24 TV, we push for responsible parenting. We push for responsible responsibility in childbearing. Please do your part.
And Parliament recalled MPs speak out on 750 billion reallocation. This is something that has also it appeared in the other news from the time when the president was sending back the budget to Parliament. You saw that, we talked about it here. Reduced expenditure critical to attaining Vision 2040. You know, these visions, I really have failed to understand these visions. They have set visions, and Mr. President, this is where I get to question what exactly happened to these visions. But here is the thing: reduced expenditure critical to attaining Vision 2040. And of course, when you talk about expenditure, you are looking at mainly government expenditure, right? The other time we got a heated up conversation here about government expenditures when we were talking about, we're discussing something about taxation and all that, and budget allocation. Yeah. We got into that conversation and we were looking at the possibilities of how we can reduce borrowing. I think the expenditures of the government are really so high. Yeah.
You know, if they were high, but high in the right places, you would have an outcome, a positive impact. And it is the positive impact. Because remember, all these different policies, the goals are necessary, the visions are necessary. Because if you don't have the visions, what are you going to do? Where are you going to go? Anything that comes up will blow you in a different direction. So you need the vision, you need that goal. But the challenge about it is once there is a very big disconnect, once the money is held, yes, once the money is held, then different things come into play. Across
the border, Kenya, one of the things that angered the Gen Z, this very generation we are talking about, which is 50%, it was the president's expenditures In Uganda, we're not only looking at the president, but even the MPs and different ministers. When you look at the lifestyle that people are living, this is sad, and we should really speak about this and act on it, because I think we are losing a lot. We are losing a lot to some of this lifestyle. It should be kept in check.
I think, no, it is now, we are normalizing, with every passing day, we are normalizing theft, we are normalizing
corruption.
Yeah, corruption, we are normal. Do you remember how we used to be so shocked whenever someone would be phoned with words of money?
Yes.
Yes? You remember how it used to be?
Normal.
And this was even just millions. And you would have everyone in the country talking about it. Talking about it, the papers would be all over the place. People would be talking within the taxis, within
hundreds of billions.
But now we are talking trillions. People are even, people are just like, for someone to come up and say in open, the president has heard your cry, A, B, C, D, let's see how it goes. It becomes a pattern. We are normalizing this.
Trust me, this should be condemned. This should be condemned to the biggest, to the highest level. Like, we should make sure that this is condemned by every Ugandan. And one of the things that I don't like to hear is how someone gets to you and tells you, oh, we are all corrupt. Whose money did I steal? You are corrupt alone. Wait, it is. Wait, it is. You have stolen public money. Make sure that when we are grilling you, don't say all Ugandans are corrupt. We have not stolen any public funds. But the reality is corruption is murder.
It is, because
murder.
If you steal that money, that means the next woman that goes into labor will fail to find those needed
because of you.
Stuff. Yes.
Because of
she will fail to find them in the hospital, and guess what? She will die. Blood will be on your hands.
So corruption is murder and should be treated that way.
But let's get into a short break, and we will be right back after this.